Welcome back. You're watching The Fix with me, Karima Brown. I'm in conversation with Water and Sanitation Minister Lindiwe Sisulu. Minister, let's just quickly round off the water situation so we can move to the question of de-densification. You've said that you've sent letters out to all municipalities to not cut the water of people who are behind. Now, in the Western Cape, we've had situations where the people in Khayelitsha, people in Mitchells Plain, people in Ocean View have had their water cut. You are saying that that is no longer the case. What about other municipalities, also in places like KwaZulu-Natal, where the government isn't different? People there also have had water cut. What is the situation in a province like KwaZulu-Natal? Are people, is the municipalities playing ball with national department?
No, it had not come to my attention that KwaZulu-Natal was cutting water, but the same regulations apply to them as well. I will, after this interview, be calling them to find out why they are cutting water. None of them have any right over the water that we have in South Africa. That water is now centralized under the command center and given out under the command center. What we have made very clear is that if anybody, any water authority has lost money during this period by opening up the taps, they can then charge the national government and we will pay that money. But otherwise, we want all of them to make sure that everybody has access to water. Their job is to look after the tanks, make sure that we can save water, make sure that the tanks are mounted, and make sure that everybody in that area has access to water. Make sure that when the water runs out, they inform us so that we can send out the tankers to fill the water tanks.
Now, Minister, obviously this is costing a lot of money. You have just undertaken to incur the debts of municipalities. When you came into this ministry, it was hollowed out. There was huge financial mismanagement, so much so that the former head of SCOPA, Mr. Themba Godi, had asked that your predecessor, Nomvula Mokunyane, should not serve in any cabinet position. How are you managing the finances of the water department, given that you took over a bankrupt department? Are you asking Treasury to give you monies in advance? Because surely you are overrunning on your budget.
Yes. Well, for this period, it's been declared a period of national disaster. That is the period I am covering. I am not covering the historic debt. We're still going to work on the historic debt is owed to municipality. But for this period, the money will be paid out by national government if the municipalities feel that they need the money to run their systems.
All right, Minister,
talking about this period.
Yeah, let's move to the question of de-densification. In today's Sunday Times, it says that some provincial governments are opposing your plan to move tens of thousands of people from crowded settlements. Before we talk about their opposition, can you just factually tell us which communities are you intending to move, given the fact that you are on record saying that historically people don't like moving because they're never sure whether they are able to return to their areas. Can you take us province by province? Which communities are going to be moved as a consequence of COVID-19?
Okay. Now, what happens is we have a council called the Command Council, and it sits on behalf of Cabinet, and we decide what we're going to do about this crisis we're in. And in that crisis, we identified that the most vulnerable people.
Minister, can you just repeat yourself? We just cut out a little bit.
Okay. We now have running the country the National Command Council on behalf of government, and all decisions that obtain over this period are taken to the Command Council, and those become the regulations under which this particular period is run. Now, we have been discussing the issue of the most vulnerable people in this country, and we've identified them as the homeless people. We've identified them as those people that live in informal settlements because they don't have the luxury that you and I have of clean running water. They don't have the second fallback requirement of social distance because they don't have anywhere to go. They are densely populated, identified therefore that it is government's responsibility for those people as we build up their communities, therefore to fast track the building of houses in some way or another.
Okay, Minister, let's just quickly come to the areas. Can you confirm that large amounts of communities are going to be moved, and which areas are they in terms of provinces?
No, I think I need to give you this context because everybody, including the media, has been putting the context wrongly, and that is going to put us into trouble.
Okay.
What I said is, because traditionally people have been resistant to moving and especially have had this kind of response to government, I would therefore take those NGOs that work with informal settlements and work out a strategy on how we can mobilize them, convince them that it is for their own good. I have chosen these organizations. There are 12 in all from all provinces, and we have met on 3 occasions working out a strategy of how to do this. I have not yet consulted the provinces because we have not yet come to a decision on how we're going to do it. But what we have decided is to use the language that is used by those NGOs. So we're not de-densifying, which is a government language. We are reblocking, which is a term that is used by the NGOs. So as we go along, I am finding the right language that they use. We're using the right language. We're using the NGOs to go ahead and prepare the people for the possibility of being asked to move. So I don't know why the media would run to the provinces. I have said over and over again, I am still consulting the NGOs because this needs to be dealt with sensitively so that the people who are in informal settlements don't feel that they are being herded out or herded in or herded anywhere. They resent that.
Okay,
so the media
Minister, let's come to a practical example. Let's look at the camp for homeless people in Strandfontein in the Western Cape. We've seen a terrible abuse happening there. If you are saying that all the measures that are taken during this disaster period are decided at the National Command Centre level, are you in a position to, for example, discipline someone, or rather the City of Cape Town and the decision-making structures there that have ignored buildings in the city centre, like the Good Hope Centre, like the Drill Hall and others, and put people, in Strandfontein in a place that is completely unsafe and also where the conditions are really terrible?
Well, in Strandfontein, as I understand it, those were the homeless people. Am I correct, Karima?
Yes, you are, Minister.
That falls outside the ambit of what I'm dealing with. That is under social development. Social development has a responsibility of taking all the homeless people and putting them in a place of shelter where they can be fed, where it is possible for them to wash their hands, and etc. So Strandfontein falls outside of my ambit. But it has come to my attention that there is some evacuations in the Western Cape. We have called the Premier. He was not aware of this, but we have been receiving reports. I am going to go to the Western Cape as of tomorrow to check on the ground what is happening. And if what is happening there is indeed, as is reported in the media, I have the authority to stop it.
Now, let's take a case like Abahlali in places like KwaZulu-Natal, where evictions are actually still happening. Surely, Minister, that has to stop, and you have to communicate with municipalities that this is not the time to evict people.
Yes, okay. In the case of Abahlali Basem Jondolo, they are part of the core team that I'm working with. And what has happened there is did not start in the period of the COVID. It is a decision that was taken some time back of slowly removing people into proper accommodation. What the city has done, as explained to me, was that they were then removing the shacks that were left vacant so as not to encourage any more occupation of those shacks. The matter was taken to the courts, so I had to take a back seat because the courts took over, and the court has thrown the Abahlali case out of court. So that is that's the prevailing decision right now, and I will be guided by that decision.
Minister, final question, just in terms of reblocking, as you use the term that NGO use, of communities because they are so densely populated, to let them be able to practice social distancing. Do we have a timeline when the National Command Centre is going to go ahead with the first reblocking, and which province will that be happening in, Minister?
Well, I think the province that would be readiest to do that, or the provinces that would be readiest to do that, are the provinces that had already started putting up some structures for informal settlements. One of them would be in the Eastern Cape. I expect that would be the easiest to do, because Duncan Village has been an informal settlement we had targeted for a long time to put into proper accommodation. The second one would be Gauteng. The third one would be Western Cape, and we would want to make sure that KZN as well is part of that team of the first 4 that we are targeting, to make sure that within the next 2 weeks we are able to have reached out to the community and made sure that they accept what we are doing as in their best interest. That's the most important thing for us.
All right, Minister, thank you so very much. We will, of course, check in with you both on the rollout of that water tanks, 20,000 more to be rolled out. And as the Minister said, they will be starting with the Eastern Cape with reblocking, which is essentially moving communities that are living in densely populated areas. Still ahead, are we living in the era of a surveillance state? And how exactly does Big Brother track our every move? On the other side of this.